So I'm JD Vogt. I'm a Senior Director of UX on Analytics.
My name is Raymon. I am a lead product designer in Analytics UX.
Salesforce has a bunch of different, we call them clouds areas. So there's Sales Cloud, which is your typical kind of customer relationship management sort of thing, and salespeople use that. Service, which is for things like call centers, communities, which are like on-web communities. If you want to go to like easports.com or something like that, you can go ahead and work with the community on that. And we work on analytics, and we work on analytics for analytics products, and for some of the products, we also serve up analytics charts and that sort of thing for them as well. So primarily what Raymond and I do is we work on the product and the tooling that people use to create stuff. And so there's kind of three main products in our area. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, just want to kind of let you get a sense of what we actually do. So we work on our analytics. There's operational dashboards and reports. These are your typical sort of like TPS reports and stuff that people work on. There are Einstein Analytics, which is more of an interactive way of looking at analytics. You can click on things and facet. Most of the examples you're going to see tonight are from that sort of product. And also Einstein Discovery, which is an automated way of finding insights in your data. And so it's a machine learning way of finding interesting stuff. The visualizations are actually a way for like humans to see differences in their data, right? And you kind of visually see, oh, there's a big difference there, a big gap or something. Einstein Discovery is more about a machine finding that stuff for you. All right. Okay, so yeah, we talked through this slide already. We're not going to go through this again. I'll just show you some examples. So these are the sorts of things that we'll make sometimes as examples for our customers. Often our customers want to customize everything. And so these are just examples of things that we kind of ship out of the box for them, but they often go in and make changes to this stuff. That's waterfalls for the chart here. This is looking at your sales team and leaderboard and seeing how everybody's doing against quota. This is looking at your kind of territory. You can see things on map and what white space there is that you can sell into. Looking at opportunity, how long do things stay in a particular stage of an opportunity? An opportunity, for those of you that don't know, is like salespeople make deals, right? And then they have stages that stuff goes through. Like the very first thing is like they call the prospect or something like that, and then can we actually have a conversation that's like a new stage? And so as things move through, it creates a funnel, and you can go ahead and sell stuff that way. These are some examples from service. I'm just going to kind of flip through these really quick just to give some examples of what we're going to kind of talk about here. So one of the things we have here at Salesforce are design principles, and these are our principles behind me here. They are clarity, efficiency, consistency, and beauty. And so when we're making designs, we're very mindful of these four things. And when we're evaluating designs, we're also mindful of these four things. So that we can look at it like, does it actually meet this criteria? And I'll give you a hint about Salesforce culture, is that if you show a list of something, someone in the audience will be like, is that list in priority order? You better say yes. People want you to take the time to actually think about the things that you're putting in front of them, right? So when we made up these principles, we said, let's put them in priority order and see what happens. And so it's actually been a really good exercise for us. So when we look at designs, we're like, is it clear? Is it efficient? Is it consistent? And is it beautiful? Does it attract the eye? Is it something that people want to attach to? So I'm going to talk a little bit about just designing information and sort of the process we go through for creating analytical apps. First, we start with empathy. So this is sort of the bedrock of design and for how you connect with your users. So we want to frame our understanding. We want to start gathering information about their users, their intentions, their goals. Not that different than any other sort of design process. When we're talking about analytics, we want to kind of get inside their head and learn more about what's the information that they need to make decisions. And so what we'll do is we think of this as a path of inquiry, right? So in their head, they're going to have like a bunch of questions kind of lined up, given whatever sort of thing they're dealing with at the moment. And so we want to understand the user's goals, and then we want to come up with like what is the list of all the questions that they're going to have in their sort of like understanding of the thing that's in front of them, or the path that's in front of them. Then we want to group those various questions under a theme. We want to prioritize them. And then we want to identify the best metrics that help deliver answers to those. And so something that's a little bit different about analytics is that a lot of times we're trying to find what is like that key performance indicator, and that often becomes like a headline at the top of the page. Then we want to identify relevant business actions that they're going to want to take after it. One of the nice things that we can offer is that people can actually take action on the things they find in the analytics and put that back to work for them rather than have to go to another tool and do the work there. And so at the end of that process, you want to have a clear understanding of who will be consuming information, and list of goals they're trying to achieve, and you want to get what those actions are. And often when we do this, either internally or sometimes we go out to customers and help them think through this process as well. It could be something as simple as a whiteboard exercise, right? We're just kind of walking them through it, and that helps us figure out that empathy, understanding where their users are at, and building a foundation. Like I said, a lot of times we'll go out and do this with customers because it helps us understand their needs better and helps us make a better product to design. But they also get a lot of value out of it as well. We also do things at Dreamforce, and so Elena, who's like the blonde in the top right picture there, did a really awesome job of making these worksheets that people could use at Dreamforce. And we just put stickers of like all the different sorts of charts, right? And we have this worksheet like, hey, lay things out on this chart, and it was a great exercise. People took a lot of time to think about, to take some meaningful time, I think, to think about, okay, I have this bar chart, what do I really want to say? What am I going to put on the page? And it was interesting because a lot of those users normally kind of just jump right into the tool and start making stuff. So they appreciated that chance to kind of take a step back and think about it. When we're designing with information, you want to start with organization. So how is the page actually laid out? And I'm just going to walk you through like how we, some of those screens I showed you before, just kind of strip little pieces away of that, and you can kind of peel the onion and see into it a little bit. So one of the things we do is we just take advantage of people's normal reading patterns of using something like an F pattern to just, get the information lined up that way, and also to provide alignment on the page. Sometimes we'll make things in like a Z sort of pattern. So again, we're putting our summary sort of information at the top, and then sort of the main hero stuff in the middle. Sometimes we'll also do like side-by-sides for people who want to do comparisons. They want to compare something quarter over quarter, for instance, or from one year to the next. Or maybe one distributor compared to another distributor. And so here's just some of the examples of, again, of those screens. So what we found has worked pretty well for our customers is, we've got some, sort of global header sort of stuff at the top, right? We have page title and actions, which is just good signposting. And then we put like I mentioned before, put the KPIs up there, big prints, so people kind of see them and get oriented and be like, okay, is there anything on fire that I need to like look at and deal with right now? And then, we put something in this particular one, we have goals underneath it. And then in this one, because this is part of a bigger app, there's some navigation points underneath it. But you can see this kind of pattern repeat itself. In this one, we actually added some sub-navigation and some filters, but again, there's like this hero chart. One thing we've also found that works really well is to put details down at the bottom. So in our product, you can kind of like facet down and get down to maybe a list of actually a small amount of things, even like 10 items. Maybe you want to take a bulk action on all 10 of those. And so it allows users to do that sort of thing. So this again, just sort of like some examples of splitting up the page, but showing related inquiries underneath it. And then I think one other thing we will do then, this is an example from our sales app. So remember we were talking about that path of inquiry earlier. So we've set up the navigation essentially of that app to answer certain questions that a salesperson or a group of salespeople would have. And so the idea is here is like when you come to that landing page, it's kind of like, hey, orient me to the space, show me the KPIs so I can kind of figure out if I need to deal with something right now or if I'm going to continue on my way. And the next question they generally ask is like, okay, how are we doing against quota? Right? You want to go in and some of that stuff. And you find you're not doing that great against quota, you're not really sure, then, okay, well, what does the overall pipeline look like? What stuff is kind of coming up? And if that's not looking so great, right? Then you're like, okay, well, who are we pitching to? And what are we pitching? Are we doing the right stuff? Are the people out there that we can move into the pipeline? And if that, and from there you can also be like, well, who should we be selling to? Who are we missing in our territories right now that we could go out and maybe like sell add-ons to or something like that? So, and then we have, some benchmarks or things after that. So we set up that order, very purposefully, right? So to match that sort of path of inquisition that users may have when they come into it. So I'm going to turn it over to Raymon, who's going to talk you through some of the various charts and their use cases.
Thank you, JB. So I'm going to delve into a little bit more of the different types of charts that are commonly used and give you some tips as far as how to best craft your visualization. Starting with charts. Bad charts are easy to make. Right, just look at these. Just a couple of examples I pulled randomly from Google. From the audience reaction, I can see people know what's wrong with these, so I'm not going to talk about them too much. But really, if you want to create good, meaningful charts, you have to, one, know your data, and two, understand the intent. Certain types of data work better with certain types of charts. For example, anything that's time-based might work best with line chart because you're seeing the progression, whether it's or whatever. And secondly, you have to understand your intent behind that visualization. Are you trying to compare things, compare values, or are you trying to detect a trend, look at outliers, right? So just understand, or try to understand the intent behind what it is that you're trying to visualize. So going to go through a couple of commonly used chart types. First, comparison. A simple bar chart is really great for comparison because our eyes are trained to look at differences in length very quickly and very efficiently. You can see here that the top bar is the longest, so it's the most, it sells the most, or it's the greatest, or whatever it might be. But it's very efficient for comparing values across different categories. Trending. Line chart is often great for trending because a line chart clearly shows you whether something is going up, going down, or staying flat. Composition. So pie charts or donut charts are often good for showing relative makeups of your data. They're better usually for showing percentages like a third, half, a quarter, 2/3 than it is for actual values. If you're trying to trying to compare values directly, a simple chart like bar chart might be better for that. A basic metric chart measures progress toward the goal. So this is often ideal for showing KPIs, key performance indicators. So in this example, maybe my goal for this quarter is 15K, and right now I'm at 10K, so I see that I still have a little bit of a gap to fill. More complex charts, such as the matrix chart here that you see, helps you visualize distribution, but it's also very information dense, so you have to use it with caution. So the example here is a little bit abstract, but if you can imagine the column as a region and the rows as types of goods being sold, the size of the circle as volume sold, and the saturation, the color saturation is profit. So for example, I can say that this one, a triangle, is where it's being sold the most, but the square is where we're getting the most profit. So we're dealing with 4 variables here, which is a lot in one chart, but this can be a really good, succinct way of displaying your information. And location, we are all familiar with maps, and a map is great for visualizing your related data, especially when your data you need to convey that information relative to the geographic location. Sometimes you don't have to use a map, especially if, for example, you're just comparing numbers. A basic list or basic bar chart or whatever could be more efficient. But if the geographic location is important, then a map is your go-to. And a Sankey chart, which is commonly used to illustrate a flow between multiple sets. It's really useful for showing many to many mappings. I will have an example later today in this presentation that shows the Sankey chart. But a common use for Sankey chart is for breaking down things in a budget, like in your taxes, breaking down tax revenues and expenses. And I'm going to touch a couple of themes around colors, and a couple of things that you need to keep in mind when dealing with colors in your visualizations. First, context. So color is a very effective way to bring attention to things, right? If something is green, then it's going up and it's positive. If something is red, it's negative, it's going down. You gotta pay attention to that. But in addition to colors, you often should consider using additional visual cues. In this case, I'm using arrows. So the one going up is paired up with the green, and the one going down is paired up with the red. And what that does is it emphasizes the meaning a little bit more, and it also assists with those who are colorblind. So we are trying to be a little bit more inclusive, right? And also, when you're using colors, be mindful of your audience, because certain colors might have different associations depending on the culture. So just be mindful of who is consuming these visualizations. Contrast, very important. You have to have charts and text and labels that are visible. You have to have sufficient contrast between the foreground and the background. If your user can't see the labels, can't see the charts, it's useless, right? So you have to make sure that all of your chart elements are visible and legible. And last but not least, try to constrain the use of your colors in your visualizations. Typically, we say that 5 is the maximum number where a user can effectively kind of remember. Because anything more than 5 becomes a little bit busy and a little bit harder to parse. And if you find yourself dealing with a lot of different colors, maybe consider alternative groupings or try to bucket some of the smaller values into a category like other or miscellaneous. So I'm going to switch gears here. Oops. Sorry, we got to look out and be logging out here. Okay, so this is a simple dashboard that I put together using the data set from the San Francisco City. And in this case, I'm focusing on the financial year of fiscal year 2019, the transportation spending for FY 2019. So, up top here, we see the cumulative number, right? We're dealing with 1.1 billion, which makes up the total for this year's spending. And I'm using color here to indicate the difference from this year's number to last year's number, where it's gone down a little bit. And that is being paired up with this little visual indicator as well. And we also have an additional bar chart to indicate that difference. And on the next section here, we see a line chart that shows how the spending has been trending in the past 5 years. As you can see, from 2014 to 2017, it's going up, but then in 2018 and 2019, it can run down a little bit. So let's go down and look at the spending by program. Yeah. So when it comes to program, you see that this part is significantly higher because with a bar chart, you can easily see that. And looking at the spending categories, we see that the operating expenses makes up almost all of the spending, and it's easy to see that in the donut chart. And within that, we also see here in the matrix chart that salaries make up the most of the spending as well. And earlier I promised to show you an example of a Sankey chart, and this is how it plays out here. So you see that there's a relationship between the funding and the program, and you see how all the different programs get their funding sources through this Sankey chart. So we can also go down a little bit further. For example, we can narrow it down to the administration program, and we see that we're dealing with 84 million here, but we see that in the spending categories, the makeup is a little bit different, right? The operating expense is actually the minority at about a third. And let's say that I'm being tasked to reduce spending in this category for administration. By looking at this, I can maybe assume that, hey, maybe if I'm focusing on work orders, it could be a little more efficient, because this is where the bulk of the money is being spent on. We can also slice and dice the data in other ways. So for example, if we focus on operating expenses that is being funded by this fund, we see that the data adjusts accordingly. And all the chart types are the same, but the information being displayed updates according to the filters that we applied up here. Now I want to take a look at this one. And earlier I talked about the importance of knowing your data to help you pick the right chart. And we can see here that we can use different types of chart to convey this information. So let me do this. What do you guys think about this? Yay, nay, no, why? Why is it bad? Doesn't make sense, right? Because we are not dealing with time, and in this case, it makes it look like we're dealing with time and it's trending down over time, but that is not the case, right? What about this one? Nah, yes, no, yes, no, better, yeah, why? So it's a little bit better in terms of kind of showing the makeup, right? So for example, in this category, it kind of makes up about 2/3 of the whole pie. But when you want to look at capacity to the values or the exact numbers, you can't really see that as clearly, right? Yeah, so building your visualization is important, but it's more than just building pretty charts. Right? So you have to know your data and understand your intent, and really enable your users to derive correlations and insights that they might not know about before. And with that said, I'm going to hand this back to JB.
Yeah, I think we're just about wrapped up. We just really have like a thank you slide left. So thank you for watching what we were talking about. Also, I think you had mentioned we're hiring at Salesforce, so you can look at job descriptions on salesforce.com. And we do have an opening actually on the analytics team. I believe the job on there right now is for a lead. We're probably going to actually change it more like a senior sort of designer, so a little bit less experience is what we think the makeup would be good for that position. And just in summary, make sure you're designing with the principles, empathize with your users, create an underlying architecture of information so stuff makes sense, and choose the right charts and be mindful of constraints and colors. And with that, we're done. Thank you very much.